Daniel loved his children, he truly did. He often found himself longing for simpler times, times of carefree laughter and endless games. He wished he could go back, relive those precious moments with his children as their peer, not their parent. One day, while exploring a dusty antique shop, he stumbled upon a curious artifact. It was a crystal, shimmering with an otherworldly light. It pulsed with energy, whispering promises of impossible dreams. The shopkeeper warned him, his voice a raspy whisper. "Be careful what you wish for." But Daniel, blinded by his desire, dismissed it as superstitious nonsense. He took the crystal home, a giddy anticipation bubbling in his chest. That night, after the children were asleep, Daniel held the crystal aloft. He closed his eyes and wished. He wished to be young again, to experience the world through their eyes. The crystal pulsed warmly in his hand. A surge of energy flowed through him, tingling in his veins like a jolt of electricity. He opened his eyes, his heart pounding. He was younger, his reflection in the window no longer the face of a careworn father, but the face of his younger self. The joy was immediate and overwhelming. Daniel spent his days playing with his children. They built pillow forts, raced through the park, and told stories under the starry sky. His wife, Sarah, watched with a mixture of amusement and concern. She saw the spark in his eyes, the unadulterated joy that had been absent for years. But she also saw a growing obsession in his gaze whenever he held the crystal. Daniel started using the crystal more frequently, dialing back the years, reliving his youth. He joined his children in elementary school, reveling in the simplicity of childhood games and friendships. He even regressed to his toddler years, giggling uncontrollably as he crawled alongside his youngest, Lily. The crystal became his escape, his portal to a time when responsibilities were non-existent and the world was full of wonder. Sarah grew increasingly worried. Daniel's obsession with the crystal was consuming him. He was neglecting his work, his responsibilities, even his own family. He was so caught up in reliving his past that he was forgetting to live in the present. She tried to talk to him, to reason with him, but he brushed off her concerns. He couldn't understand her worries. He was happy. He was finally free. One day, Sarah, at her wit's end, confronted Daniel. She pleaded with him to stop, to see the damage he was doing to himself and their family. In response, Daniel, his eyes shining with an almost manic energy, offered her a solution. "Join me," he urged, holding out the crystal. "We can be young again together. We can relive our youth, raise our children as equals, as friends." Sarah, torn between love and fear, hesitated. She looked at the crystal, its seductive glow promising a life free from worry and responsibility. She looked at her husband, his face a mask of youthful exuberance, and she gave in. Their life took on a surreal quality. Sarah, transformed into a vibrant young woman, embraced their new reality with a mixture of trepidation and excitement. They enrolled in college alongside their two eldest children, sharing classes and dorm parties. They spent their weekends at amusement parks, their laughter echoing through the air, indistinguishable from their children's. The younger children, too young to understand the absurdity of it all, simply accepted their parents' transformations as normal. They had their playmates back, their companions, in a world of make-believe and endless fun. But as the novelty wore off, a creeping unease settled over their lives. The lines between parent and child, adult and child, blurred and then vanished entirely. The crystal, once a source of joy and wonder, became a crutch, a dangerous addiction that threatened to unravel the very fabric of their family. The accident happened on a day like any other. Daniel, regressed to infancy, was crawling around the living room, his laughter echoing through the house. Lily, now older than him, toddled after him, her tiny hand reaching out to grab his. Sarah, forever young, watched them with a melancholic smile on her face. As Daniel crawled towards the coffee table, his tiny hand knocked against the crystal lying precariously on the edge. It tumbled to the ground, the sound of shattering glass piercing the air. Time seemed to stop. The air crackled with energy. Daniel, frozen in mid-crawl, looked up, his baby blue eyes wide with confusion. And then, the world dissolved around him. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was met with the panicked face of his eldest daughter, now a teenager. He tried to speak, to ask what was happening, but the only sound he could manage was a gurgling cry. He tried to sit up, but his limbs felt weak, uncoordinated. He looked down at his body, his mind unable to comprehend what he was seeing. He was a baby, a helpless, babbling baby trapped in his infant body. His daughter, her face pale with horror, scooped him up, her touch both familiar and alien. "It's okay, Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's okay." But it wasn't okay. It would never be okay. The crystal was gone, shattered into a million pieces. Daniel was trapped, his mind a prisoner in his infant body, forced to watch helplessly as his children grew up around him, changing his diapers, feeding him, bathing him. Sarah, her youthful beauty now a cruel mockery of their fate, tried to adjust to their new reality. She cared for baby Daniel with a heartbreaking tenderness, her eyes reflecting the depth of their shared tragedy. But the life they once knew, the family they had built, was gone, shattered along with the crystal. Years turned into a blur. Daniel watched his children graduate high school, then college. He watched them fall in love, get married, start families of their own. He watched Sarah, his heart aching for her, find love again with his oldest friend. A kind man who treated Daniel with a gentle affection that belied his unusual situation. One day, Sarah brought home a newborn baby, a little girl with Daniel's eyes. She laid the baby beside him on the floor, a bittersweet smile on her lips. He looked up at Sarah, his eyes filled with a lifetime of unspoken words, of regret, of love, of unbearable loss. And in that moment, he knew he was trapped, not only in his infant body, but also in a nightmare of his own making.